E-money is stored monetary value, and it's represented as a claim on the issuer. So really you need to have storage, monetary value and debt in order to produce e-money. So typically that's, for example, a prepaid card. You're storing money on the card. It has a monetary value because behind it is a fiat currency, say US dollars or pounds, and it's a debt because the person issuing the e-money is indebted towards the customer. The challenges that e-money did have, and still to some extent stand true today, is primarily with perception, which is interesting because it wraps up in the same way with Bitcoin. When e-money was first introduced back in 2000, there was a lot of concern about how it could be abused, so to speak. Let's say prepaid cards, people had the perception that it would be used primarily for fraud and money laundering purposes. And I think culturally, gradually, people started to come to terms with it, that in a way it's as anonymous as cash is, and that, through the regulation you build a familiarity with these different devices, and then it becomes custom. People get used to it. However, you do see a lot of fragmentation even now today in Europe in terms of perception of e-money. So, for example, in Germany, there's much more stringent requirements on e-money issuers than in other places, say Belgium or the UK. Yeah, Germany is, I think, an interesting test case for Bitcoin, primarily because it's not the first place you would expect to see regulation in. That said, the likes of Fidel Bank are progressive banks which were able to develop the partnerships with these Bitcoin providers. So maybe because there was the business case there that the regulator responded to that. I would say the most progressive, or say challenger banks out there in the UK, I would say Metro Bank is a good one. And then I think a UK-based bank which is not UK, let's say it doesn't originate from the UK, is Handelsbank, and I think these two banks are relatively progressive, at least within the UK market. Yeah, it wraps down, the base of financial licensing is currency. If it is recognised as currency, then it's going to open up, let's just say, a massive opportunity for regulated businesses. As soon as we talk about financial instruments, futures, options on Bitcoin, they will immediately become regulated. Forward pricing on Bitcoin would immediately become regulated. Other interesting things which may not depend so much upon whether it's recognised as currency is payment services businesses. So, Bitcoin is one of its most respected advantages is that it's a much more economical way of transacting. So even if it's not recognised as currency, it's possible that it will turn to be regulated in terms of payment services businesses, purely from an anti-money laundering perspective, like you're seeing in the US with FinCEN. Yeah, that's the most amazing thing about Bitcoin, is that in effect it's a disruptive technology. It's taking payments outside of the banking system, which is cumbersome, not particularly fast, and expensive. You've got great services out there now like Currency Cloud, which managed to cut down the foreign exchange fees, etc. But Bitcoin is a real alternative in that sense and is even challenging that model. So that I think Bitcoin, there's a massive opportunity. Any concerns people have with making international transfers using Bitcoins? I would put to them, well, the way of addressing those concerns is through regulation. So if you do have a payment services business operating on the ground in South Africa wanting to provide international money transfers using Bitcoin, then it's simply a matter of regulating that business. If you're concerned about anti-money laundering, then register and regulate. It's not, I don't think it's an option to sit on the fence and say, well, it's all to do with, all of this is being used for money laundering, or all of this is, again, sanction busting, or, it's being used to circumvent international conventions, etc., as terrorist financing. Well, if you're unhappy with it as it stands, then take a stand and regulate. That's my view, essentially, because unfortunately, the longer it continues in kind of this quagmire or limbo situation, the more people have the negative perception of it. And so, look, there are benefits. The benefit with Bitcoin transfers, the benefits are you're circumventing the banking system and reducing your costs and making a transfer. There also are the benefits are, if you're making a settlement on, say, a trade in the future, if you're storing your value in Bitcoin, then you're not subjected at least to the foreign exchange fluctuation. So in some ways you can hedge your risk through Bitcoin, although that's debatable depending on whether, Bitcoin's fluctuating up and down or not. But then the third benefit is, reaching the unbanked. But the fourth benefit is creating a viable, fast money transfer system that is applied internationally and without any restrictions. I mean, restrictions in terms of technical restrictions. All you need to receive and send Bitcoin is some lo-fi telephone, some old Nokia from the 90s. So as we see with Kipoche, the new money transfer based in Kenya. So there's a huge amount of opportunity there, and I just feel that potential should not be lost on a negative perception. And people who sit on the fence and say, oh well, shouldn't be don't take a position with regards to its regulation. And here I mean authorities. I don't mean necessarily libertarians who are coming from a different ethical angle. For those, I would say regulate it. Let society experience its benefits.